And we're back.
And we're so back.
Good morning.
Good morning, Myra.
My dear sweet Mia.
Good morning, darling Myra.
So, today, we're going to be talking about boobs.
Oh my God.
I know. Isn't that so exciting? So stimulating?
And I've been waiting. I've been waiting for it.
Itching for this conversation.
I have a small anecdote before we begin.
Oh, please.
That I think relates to this theme. And that is, yesterday, I had the privilege of meeting the 2022 King Richard's Fair champion of the cleavage contest.
That is such a high honor.
I was talking to this person like for a while before it came up, and I said, I've been in the presence of monarchy this whole time.
Royalty?
Yeah, it was nuts. And I learned it was an underdog story.
Does this take place at King Richard's Fair? Because I've been many times. I haven't seen any like boob-related activities, but it is quote-unquote family-friendly, so maybe they host those festivities elsewhere, or...
Apparently it was at the fair. Maybe it's just, like, occasional.
I thought about entering.
Oh my God, you should!
But then I was like, I don't know about all that.
This person, the champion, had a great underdog story where, like...
I'd love to know, yeah.
She didn't make it past the first round, but then she was a wild card pick halfway through. And then she caught 10 grapes in her bosom and won the crown.
10 grapes.
Mm-hmm. I thought that applied to the theme of today. So I just wanted to,
yeah.
And I thought it was weird how I was to meet this person on the eve of such an amazing episode.
Yeah, the boob episode.
Yeah.
You meet Queen of the Boobs of Carver, Massachusetts, King Richard's Fair.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So throughout this episode, you will hear both of us use the word boob, breast, bosom,
rack.
Bosoms, but rack, fun bags. Words that mean the chest of, yeah.
I'm trying to think of any other.
I know.
It'll come to me.
It will strike you when the moment is right. And the implications of boobs, breasts, bosoms, fun bags in art and throughout art history. For me personally, as a woman with big naturals who reads books.
Big naturals.
I have always been curious about the way that breasts have functioned visually in art history. A couple of things to start. This is a brief survey of something that is far too vast for us to fit in a conversation of 40 to 90 minutes. As we discussed on the way over here, we very easily could make 6 boob-themed episodes.
I'd say between 7 and 8,000.
This will mostly be focused on breasts in Western culture, that is European and American culture. Mostly because that is what there is the most research on at present.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps we could unpack it further at a later date.
I've noticed that whenever I want to dive deep into a
topic, yeah.
The only books I can find are very Western culture centric.
Very Western culture centric. You have to like really dig for anything else. Another thing that I would like to clarify before we get into the nitty-gritty is the word allegory. This is a word I will be using a lot throughout this conversation, and I wanted to clarify what this word means because before I studied art history in undergrad, I did not know what this word meant. So if you are in a similar boat, if you are just getting started into the world of art and art history, an allegory is a symbol or a visual or a narrative that represents a greater meaning, often with moral, religious, political, or cultural connotations. This word is similar to, but not synonymous with, symbol or symbolism, which I will also use quite a bit throughout this conversation. Symbol is more broad. This is more theological, more conceptual.
It's almost like metaphor, too, maybe.
Yeah.
But I feel like metaphor refers to writing.
It's like a literary.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that could be,
Motif,
emblem. I might say emblem.
That's great.
Keep it. To start us off, in terms of basic biological function, what do boobs do, Mia?
They're comfy, cozy, and...
Take nap on boob?
Take nap, hold, fondle.
Caress.
Fling them about, spin around real fast,
Jump up and down.
Jump up and down.
Jump up on a trampoline, catch grapes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I guess provide sustenance for youngins.
Yeah.
And others,
And
should they be so inclined.
Warm glass of breast milk to start the day. Yeah, completely independent of erotic narratives, historians and scientists say fundamentally breasts exist for nutrients to sustain an offspring as they do amongst all other mammals. We've invented a lot of other ways to use them.
We've been a bit creative about it.
We've been very creative, and I think that that is something to be proud of. But given this biological framework of breastfeeding, it tracks relatively that in ancient human civilizations, breasts in art and in visual culture were often associated with fertility, motherhood, parenting, nourishment. The ancient Egyptian goddess Isis, for example, was often pictured with one exposed breast or two if they were feeling a little crazy.
A little freaky.
Yeah. And given that associations of the breast were hypothetically rooted in like this observation of function, it makes sense, I guess, that visual representations in this context emerged all over the ancient world, regardless of culture. Some other prehistoric visual objects that are thought to have paid homage to maternity are the Venus of Willendorf. I could not find many sources on prehistoric depictions of boobs that did not mention this source.
Yeah.
Everyone's obsessed with her.
She's an icon. She's a diva.
She is. She's thick. She's voluptuous. She has very exaggerated breasts.
Maybe she doesn't, though. Like, maybe
that's just, yeah.
Maybe this woman...
That's just what she looked like.
That'd be awesome.
One of my favorites is a 6th century relief of the Indian goddess Lahwagari. She is rendered here squatting with spread legs.
Yeah, my God.
Pussy out.
Yeah, I mean, you could say.
One could say. Her breasts are very large, ample, perky for their size.
It looks like this is mid, like, motion. Like, it looks like the breasts have been,
like she
rising.
just dropped down as fast as she could, and her boobs are still, like, floating in the air.
She had to squat now.
This was hypothesized to be her readying herself for childbirth, but she's not pregnant.
Maybe she's practicing.
Maybe she is practicing.
Maybe.
Like, the only thing that indicates that she could be ready to give birth is that her breasts are so ample, and also her position. But anybody can have big boobs.
I mean, she's snatched for a pregnant
Right? Her
person.
Waist is snatched.
Yeah.
But then that also raised the question, do historians assert this sort of, like, lens of fertility onto prehistoric images of naked women?
If she's the goddess of fertility, I do get why.
Right. This is clearly a birthing position.
But
naturally for the body.
That's interesting how she's not
pregnant.
Visibly pregnant. Yeah, interesting. Is this part of how big is this? Is this a tile? Is it
I believe it's a pot. Like and that was also, I found, common in Indian culture at this time to have fertility deities.
Titties.
Be able to plant something in it as symbolic of fertility.
That's so cool.
Right?
So it would grow.
It would function. It would grow. Right. Isn't that so cool?
Oh, the imagery. Oh, this makes me so happy. Is
right?
Like growth and
rebirth
how cool.
Right?
That reminds me of like all of there's this trend of ceramic mugs and planters with boobs on them now.
Yes, there is that.
Yeah, and they're normally like very small, kind of perky breasts,
boobs, yeah,
which is awesome in its own right. But we're still doing it,
independent of fertility and maternity and all of those narratives. Breasts, and often a singular exposed breast, were historically associated with power, with political power and military power. Cleopatra, for example, was at times depicted with an exposed breast in wall paintings and engravings. Some have speculated that this was also indicative of her promiscuity.
Ooh.
So it could be power or promiscuity, both. The legend of the Amazons in Greek and Roman mythology They were a lethal tribe of women from Scythia, thought to be the daughter of Ares, the god of war.
Ooh.
And they were often depicted with clothing and or armor that left one breast exposed. There is a sculpture by Phidias. It's a wounded Amazon from the 5th century BCE that displays a wounded Amazon warrior, giant and powerful, still reaching for her weapon with one boob exposed. Historians have speculated, in fact, that these women, the Amazon tribe warriors, chopped off a breast to improve balance and aim with their weapons.
That's visceral.
Isn't that? That's like, whoa. I'm like, I'm not sure
Whoa.
how that would work.
I feel
or
like
why
that
they
would,
said that.
I mean, maybe, I get, if your weapon is heavy or something.
Maybe, and like you have one arm here and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
my titties are also heavy and so is this.
You know.
What did they do with the leftover boob? Like after you, who knows?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I don't
if
know.
they did go through with all that.
I'd love to talk to a historian about this because despite these claims or despite these speculations, most surviving artwork of Amazon women had both boobs, just one exposed, one hidden. But given all of these ancient or pre-modern narratives of fertility, maternity, power, how did we get here to where we are today in Western popular culture, that is, at least, with the body almost being separate from the breast, where breastfeeding is frowned upon in public. Breasts are sexualized, commodified, marketed as a consumer product in magazines and porn videos, and even in museums with nude paintings, something to be bought and sold.
That change and slide for the audio listeners.
Drastic,
I know
right?
that kind of made my skin crawl a little bit. We went from these beautiful depictions of our Amazon daughters of gods, and we went to Playboy and
Help Pornhub save the boobs.
yeah, I wish I had an answer. I think that a lot of this is based in culture developing into one of shame.
Absolutely.
Like shame-based cultures. I mean, especially in America, anything rooted in Puritan culture or anything like
Right.
that, I totally get why instead of lifting up and recognizing the beauty and natural function and natural
Absolutely right.
aesthetic beauty of breasts were sort of...
That is something that you should hide.
Yeah.
Even with the free the nipple movement, like you may post a photo in a tank top where the outline of your nipples are slightly visible, but if you posted your naked breast, it would get removed. I'm actually worried that this slideshow, if we post it to YouTube, that it will get removed.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting...
That'll be an experiment.
moment. I mean, if you're watching this and all the nipples are censored, it's just because
then you know the answer.
we wanted to be safe about it.
Right, exactly. But there was definitely, I think, a journey that went into that, I'd say. Images of boobs have traveled a long way. To start, I think we should speculate and ponder medieval Christian art.
Oh, yes.
And the bosom of the Virgin Mary.
That's been through a lot. The Virgin Mary.
Itself.
Yeah, the Virgin Mary, that'd be a crazy episode all on its own.
We should do an episode.
It's just the Virgin Mary and her body and how it's represented throughout history and art. That would be very interesting.
Very much love to do that. This is Giovanni Antonio Boltraffio's The Virgin and Child. This is a rare instance of a medieval painting of a baby that is not terrifying. This is a relatively cute baby. The breast of the Virgin Mary became like this sort of potent symbol of nourishment and sustenance. This was known as the Madonna Lactans or the nursing Madonna. This is images depicting Mary breastfeeding the infant Jesus, or my favorite term for it, which is Virgin of the Milk. I think that's
Virgin of the Milk.
It encapsulates both like physical and spiritual nourishment in one. But ironically enough, breastfeeding in Europe was not done unless out of absolute necessity.
Oh, isn't that because like they had wet nurses?
Yes. Yeah. If mothers had the means to outsource breastfeeding onto wet nurses, it was always seen as the proper choice. It was not proper to breastfeed. That was for poor people. That was their career. So they were always milking.
Wow, the economy back then.
Oh, the economy.
The milk-based economy.
The milk-based economy, yeah. Breastfeeding was only something that working-class mothers did. This continued from medieval times until the 19th century. Into the 20th century, it completely died.
That's wild.
Yeah, they said put those titties away. That
Lock
is for
'em
the
up.
pores and the whores. That's not...
Pores and the whores.
That's not for us.
Ugh.
So why was Mary allowed to whip him out? Why do we think? Why do you think?
She had, she got away with a lot.
In medieval and Renaissance Europe, Catholics loved blood. They were very obsessed, very fascinated with blood, more particularly with holy blood.
Ooh.
The milk of the Holy Mother was thought by many to be the refined blood of her holy womb, and therefore, images and sculptures of the Mother Mary breastfeeding had a sort of like theological relevance in that, it should be noted too that much of her body is covered in this imagery. So she daintily pops out one nipple and is otherwise engulfed in a lot of garments.
So,
just enough for the infant Christ to suckle.
So in this context, the milk from her breast is it's hypothetically,
yeah,
the blood of her womb.
The blood of her womb
feeding back to Jesus.
Yeah, because she was chosen. She's divine. She's holy. She is giving that holiness onto the prophet, onto her offspring.
That's so metal. Isn't
that? I was like, why is she allowed to have her titties out? And I found that specifically when I was looking at this sculpture of Virgin of the Milk, Virgen de la Leche, of 1500, the sculpture, they talked about that quite extensively.
Wow. Yeah. That's so cool.
Right? One woman that I would love to discuss in this specific context in like the 1500s is Agnès Sorel.
I love the name Agnès.
Me too. I'm going to add that to my baby name list, actually.
Bring it back, yeah.
Bring back Agnès. She is, or was, a notorious mistress of King Charles VII of France. She was, in fact, the first ever royally recognized mistress of French court.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, isn't that...
Oh my gosh. Good for her.
Right?
She put in her hours.
She put in overtime for that, yeah. I am most certain. This portrait of her by Jean Fouquet is from, I believe, 1450, and it is of her, gazing downwards in a sultry manner. She's veiled, and she's got one boob popping out of her out of her gown, one boob popping out of her breast. Her hand is placed on a pink book through which her finger is penetrating as well.
Yonic.
I'm not sure if that is meant to be perceived in that way or if I'm reading it in that way.
Well, have you seen Portrait of a Lady on Fire?
I'm sure.
It's a movie. It's this like foreign...
Oh.
Yeah, it's this foreign sapphic film, and I think that they probably pulled directly from this image,
yeah.
because there's this painting at the end, spoilers, but there's this painting at the end of the movie where one of the love interests is posed in the exact same way with her finger sort of penetrating the leaves of a book.
Yes.
And it's very purposefully Yonic. So I bet that this does refer, except she's being a little bit more...
A little bit more
hook-fingered about it in the movie.
She's in there.
She's getting in, yeah.
Yeah, everybody in French court, they hated on her.
Oh.
They hated on her. But she grew incredibly influential. She birthed bastards, and she generated a lot of scandal and gossip. Allegedly, with a moderate emphasis on alleged, much of the slander that plagued her was due to her fashion choices. She is said to have, on occasion, tailored her gowns to exposed one breast. Not two, but one, which likens her to the Virgin Mary.
Oh my God.
As the whore of the king. This alleged fashion was ridiculed, berated, and also copied. This became fashion.
Oh, that's very Mean Girls.
Isn't that
one scene where they're all cutting?
They cut the holes in the boobs?
Oh, I'm so obsessed with her.
I know, I love her.
Oh, wow.
And then the Archbishop of Reims he was mad. He was pissed.
Yeah, well.
He was like, all these women, rah! He was said to have advised the king to reprimand and correct his woman for such provocative garments. And this is a quote from him. With front openings through which one sees the teats, nipples, and breasts of a woman.
Teats? Teats. He said, get those teats out of here, man.
Put those teats away.
He's just mad because
I would love
all
a corset to do this.
Oh, yeah, I mean, what is that? It's like, what is it called when it's not a corset, but it's like
a bodice?
A Boudoir. I don't know. Send
us a message on the website if you know how to pronounce this or anything.
GildedEyePodcast@gmail.com.
Please do. Outrage from French court multiplied when the court painter, Jean Fouquet, again, email us, and he painted Agnès Sorel, the mistress of the king, as the Holy Virgin, the Mother of Christ. This is Holy Mary, Mother of God. As
this
Agnès,
one,
right?
We have a lot to unpack with this image.
Oh my gosh, Whore Meets Madonna. She's so pale.
I was gonna say this is giving Dune, the Harkonnens.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like Geiger, his work as well. It feels very alien.
It is.
And
then these angels in the background, they're all red.
Ugh. This is making me uncomfortable.
Also,
that baby is
is a medieval, and he's pointing.
Ew.
Yeah, she looks very otherworldly, I would say here. I think the intention was to make her divine, but she's very much...
I think that she does have... It's definitely
regal.
Otherworldly,
yeah.
But it does not strike an angelic nerve to me.
Yeah.
It strikes something more sinister.
Sinister, she's like she's a little bit badass, I
know. I love it. I do wonder, though, the breasts in this one are a little bit
when we look at these
wonky.
Two, that looks like a baseball.
It does look like a grapefruit. And then the other one that's not exposed, too, it's like there's a mile between the two breasts.
Yeah, those are divorced boobs.
And they're
not
full
together.
circles. You can tell that I believe you can tell that a man
Oh, yeah,
painted
he was
this.
like, yeah. Like, I think the court painter may have had a fascination with her to paint her in this way.
It's very common when women are hated on, especially for being too promiscuous, is like people lash out, and it stems back to an inherent like attraction.
It does.
They're mad that they're
like, what the hell?
Yeah,
she's so sexy.
She's so sexy, and I can't have her. And how dare she know that she's sexy and want to share that? I do think
confident.
It's funny. This baby does look really fed up. He's like, oh, Jesus Christ, Mom has her tit out again.
Jesus Christ, literally. Everybody was mad about this. This woman who had extramarital sex with the King of France, who provoked court through scandalous fashion and undeniable political influence, was likened to the Mother of God, who was seen as a beacon of femininity and maternity. Everyone was angry.
Again, that's metal.
Isn't that so sick?
And I'm a fan. Her. Yeah.
Moving on. Unfortunately. I love her.
Bye, Agnès.
This, I think, sparked some new sentiments about the way that breasts are depicted in art. Moving into the Renaissance period, we saw a revival of classical ideals of beauty, explorations of human anatomy, and we saw religion straying from boobs very drastically following, right?
It got so boring about it.
After the Protestant Reformation, Catholic art was viciously scrutinized. They were like, why are you painting religious icons in this way? Why are you painting religious icons at all? Boo. Ugh. But then the Council of Trent, which is through the Catholic Church, banned imagery of the Virgin Mary breastfeeding in the mid-1500s. I have a picture, or painting rather, of the Council of Trent.
Love that random people got to...
They were like,
bunch
no
of
more
randos
boobs.
Were like, actually...
Look at all these guys.
Also, who are they to be like, the Virgin... Isn't she allowed to do every... I mean, she's... These...
They're like, actually, we control her too, don't worry.
Yeah, that's messed up.
Yeah, they banned it on the grounds that it could be distracting to men of prayer.
Oh, I went to an all-girls Catholic school.
Oh my goodness.
And there were so many instances where, like, I remember this one year there was like a crazy smackdown on, we all wore uniforms with white shirts. And there was a smackdown on colored sports bras, like sports bras that were not,
how
like
dare
skin tone color.
Let us know that your boobs are there. Like, what do you...
but and the reasoning behind it was we had, in the whole school, we had maybe 2 to 3 male teachers out of an entire school full of women and young girls. And the reason was, like, we can't distract the male teachers, so
Oh my
all of you guys have to
God.
go out and buy different
Not their fault
bras.
for looking at children.
I know,
if they
and I
do-
was like,
right.
maybe that's a them problem.
If they are so distracted by like a 15-year-old girl,
Fucked up.
that's fucked up, right?
Yeah, so this is definitely still a problem.
Absolutely, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that some of this shame culture that we were discussing earlier is maybe not rooted in this, but this could have contributed to that.
Yeah, I mean,
When-
it's definitely, like, stemmed back.
Right, absolutely. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo depicted the human body with a focus on realism, proportion, and anatomy. And they also explored the form and function of the female body while they mostly focused on the male body, as we know.
Well,
No.
we'll cover that.
We'll get to that another day. And this, combined with the decision of the Council of Trent, created a sort of like secularized breast. A breast that was not religious. It was not maternal. I think it's interesting that they banned breasts in the Virgin Mary, but they were like, you can paint nudes, though, as long as they're hot.
No hotties?
This is seen in works like Italian painter Botticelli's The Birth of Venus. Italian painter Titian is also venerated with kindling the sensuality in the female nude in the Venus of Urbino of 1538. Look at her.
Look at the dog.
I love the dog. And
So
that
cute.
means loyalty often in Renaissance art,
I
having a dog. Yeah.
see.
This one is odd. This one is really odd to me. Around 1594, a painting simply emerged. It appeared. No one knows where it came from.
Nobody knows?
Nobody knows. There's been speculation, but our artist is completely unknown. They found this.
What?
It was of King Henry IV, again of France. Those French kings. You got lots of hoes.
France was kind of wild.
Yeah. This is his mistress, Gabrielle d'Estrée. Again, not sure if I'm saying her name correctly, but she is pictured on the left, locking eyes with the viewer. She is nude completely from the waist up with her bottom half submerged in a bathtub.
Oh, they're in a bathtub.
Yeah, to her left is another woman. The mistress, Gabrielle d'Estrée, reaches across the composition and gingerly pinches between her pointer finger and her thumb the nipple of the other woman.
It looks like she's plucking it.
It does. Look at her hand. It's very
Ugh.
malformed. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have
Yeah,
you guys-
the thumb. The thumb looks like another index
entity.
finger just sort of horizontally flipped.
If you guys are not, whoever is listening is not looking at this painting, that is one of the most mangled. I can't paint hands. I'm not, no scrutiny to this anonymous artist from 500 years ago, but 400 years ago. But that is an interesting.
I mean, the whole painting is rendered quite well, I would say. Like
Right, exactly. So
The
that's why it's
coloring and the
shocking.
shadow is nice, and the other hands seem relatively
Normal,
okay.
yeah.
So this specific hand, I'm a bit curious about.
There's a lot happening here.
I didn't know
I'd
they
love to
were in a
more.
bathtub. That
They are in a
context is
bathtub.
really
Yeah, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Who do you think the other woman is?
Oh God, I don't know. Catherine the Great.
I wish. That's her sister.
What? Wait, no.
The painting
No.
is Gabrielle d'Estrée and one of her sisters.
Guys, we lost the plot. What was going on in 1594?
Nobody knows who painted this too, which I think is even funnier. Who painted the king's mistress and her sister fondling nipples and sitting in a bathtub?
I wish I could tell you what this little gesture means. Like,
I'm so
trying-
confused.
I'm really
It doesn't
especially
feel
with
sexual even. It's just like odd.
No, it's just something that they do, I guess.
I suppose.
That's so strange. And they're both very confident about it. They're looking
they're
at me
looking
as
at
if
us, yeah.
like they're judging me because I have a problem with
What do you
this
mean?
behavior. Yeah.
You don't pinch nipples in the bathtub
With your sister?
with your sister?
Oh, how curious.
I think this painting is so funny though. This painting has been featured in memes now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
Very
can
good.
see why. Well, so okay, so where were we before this? So how did the breast Oh man. So okay, so we went from so we went from beautiful Venus of Urbino, like natural beauty.
She is
to
very
this-
sensualized though.
She is. Yeah, she's very sensual.
And then somebody ran.
And then somebody took that and
ran.
This is
so tasteful, though. The Venus of Rubino, I feel like it's very refined. And then
this definitely strikes a different nerve.
Definitely. But we are seeing overall a rise of sexualization relating to breasts, eroticism.
Right.
She's no longer maternal. She's no longer the Madonna.
What does this mean?
So, I know. This one really, I was like, I have to have this one in here.
Oh my God.
Gabrielle d'Estrée. I don't know. In the Baroque and Rococo periods, art became more dramatic and ornate.
Oh, wow.
Right? The depiction of breasts often played into themes of eroticism and excess. Dutch painter Peter Paul Rubens depicted voluptuous figures with a focus on sensuality and abundance, which reflected a cultural fascination with indulgence that was communicated through women's bodies as a vessel. Rubens was also renowned for liking them a little thick.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
he didn't hold back.
He did not. So there's some voluptuous ladies here. This is a detail of the landing of Marie de Medici at Marseille of 1600.
So when you say indulgence through women's bodies, it was more of a representation of culture?
Yes, because this was like the dawn of the Dutch Golden Age when they were trading and buying. Consumerism was completely on the rise. In this context, the female body, especially when rendered voluptuously with ample bosom, ample hips, ample stomach even, was meant to signify wealth, the bounty of trade, prosperity, and also to reference antiquity, to reference, muses and whatnot. The term Rubenesque still exists today to talk about full-figured women.
Oh, how cool.
I love that, right?
That's awesome.
During the Baroque period, trade and colonization were running rampant, as previously discussed. And in tangency with the female body, particularly the curvy form with ample breasts being allegorized as bountiful during the Baroque period, the Americas were often depicted as such. A painting by the name of An Allegory of America Suckling Foreigners of the late 1700s was made in colonial Peru by an anonymous artist. Unfortunately, this work is in a private collection, so the best image that I could locate of it at this time is a scan from a book. But, to those who are not watching, America here is pictured as a voluptuous woman breastfeeding 2 white children, presumably Spanish, while a gaggle of children around her await her teat. The Americas then, in this image, are a nurturing and submissive woman willing to offer her bounty to European colonizers, her breast milk by extension being indigenous lands and labor and the transatlantic slave trade.
And America in this painting is depicted as, if I'm not mistaken, a white woman, right?
Yeah.
So even though
this is meant to signify indigenous people, indigenous land, she's pictured with pale skin.
That's so
right?
Complex.
This painting is also called An Allegory of Spain and Her Treatment of Her South American Colonies.
So it's implying that it's a good, holy thing.
Yeah, this is essentially propaganda for Spanish colonies and other colonies as well.
Wow.
Even though we know that this is not the case. This is indeed using the female body, the function of breasts, to sort of romanticize and pacify any outrage or scrutiny of the colonies' treatment of indigenous people, indigenous lands,
right?
African American people, enslaved individuals.
Yeah, that's so.
So I want to find a really good image of this to put on here, but I couldn't find it.
That's okay.
I might have to
Guess we'll have to just go to the private.
Yeah, we'll have to harass them.
Yeah, we'll do it. We could do it. We're threatening.
We are threatening, I'd say. Leaving Baroque and entering the Neoclassical period of the late 1700s, we start to see a pushback against the drama and the frivolity of Baroque art. Symmetry, chastity, simplicity, and antiquity are all prioritized. Jacques-Louis David was the most prominent artist of the Neoclassical period of the late 1700s. I have an image here of a portrait of a young woman in white of 1798. She is seated in 3/4 positioning, looking off to the side. She's distracted. She's not addressing us at all. She's seated in an ornate chair in an interior setting with a simple, chaste white gown, except there is a little bit of
sheerness.
Yeah, don't worry. We didn't forget about the single boob. We didn't forget about them.
I like this. This feels sophisticated.
Doesn't it? Yeah. Her titty's out, but it's refined.
In a very you could roll up to an event.
Yeah, and be like, oh, this is inspired by Agnès Sorel. What do you mean?
I recognize this painting as well.
This painting is the cover of a book called My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshkov. It's an excellent read. It's a little bit, it's about a woman who is recently a college graduate and she just drugs herself into sleeping for a year, basically.
Oh, wow.
Very privileged. But yeah, that's where I found this painting from. I didn't even know that it was Jacques-Louis David until I did this research. But yeah.
I haven't read it, but...
Yeah, he set the standard for what was expected in terms of symmetry and chastity and simplicity in the Neoclassical period. Now, there is one artwork from this era that I would really love for us to sink our teeth into.
Oh, I'm excited.
And that is Marie Benoit's portrait of Madeleine from 1800. The artist herself, for a little bit of background, is a French woman of, like, a wealthy upbringing. She is the daughter of a civil servant. And even given these odds, it is still not at all common for a woman to have been as successful as Benoit was. She started professional art training at the age of 13, and she exhibited at the Paris Salon 10 years later at 23.
Oh my God.
Right? Which, okay, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Paris Salon, that is the most coveted, or was the most coveted and celebrated art event of the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries in Europe. That was the goal.
And as a 23-year-old?
Yeah.
Wow.
She did the damn thing. This piece in question, for those of you who are only listening instead of looking, is a half-length portrait of a young Black woman positioned at a 3/4 angle to her left. But despite her angle, her gaze still boldly confronts the viewer. She wears a white gown, much like the one of Jacques-Louis David's portrait of a young woman in white. Her gown, however, is tied with a red belt. Her left arm supports the gown, but has lowered it just enough to expose her right breast to the audience.
The striking contrast in this piece between her skin, which is very beautifully rendered.
Exactly.
Lots of subtleties and dark values in her skin, and it is contrasting so abruptly with the white fabric and the red belt.
Right.
You couldn't miss the breast if you tried.
Couldn't, yeah. That breast is shouting.
Mm-hmm.
And this was also a way for Benoit to establish herself as an artist and in the skin tones that she was able to convey, because throughout much of like modern or pre-modern European art history, rendering darker skin tones was seen as a challenge. It was more so that European artists did not bother to learn how to layer color, did not bother to learn the undertones of darker skin tones, but she really established herself as an artist here by showing that she can depict people of all different colors, all different ethnicities, and do so in a way that is not caustic, is not stereotypical. To set some context, this piece was painted in the year 1800. This was 6 years after the abolishment of slavery. Images of Black women in dominant European culture at this time were often very caustic, very stereotypical, even under the ruse of neoclassical art. Here I have Francois Melapart's portrait of a Haitian woman for comparison. He features his sitter holding a bowl of exotic fruits. This is also seen in Costa paintings, which shows women of African descent often with a basket of fruit to show where they are from, to effectively place her out of the context of Europe. Boldly patterned textiles were also common in portraits of Black women to separate the fashion choices between that of European women. Like Madeleine, her breast is exposed, but instead of seemingly offering it to the audience with her hand, it appears that her garment has fallen, and she just doesn't care.
It doesn't feel intentional.
It doesn't feel as intentional.
It feels like she's caught in a moment of
right.
Like
and
it
we're
was
looking
an accident.
At her. We're voyeurists.
And this was a man painted this.
This
as
is
well,
a man
right?
painted this. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's stark, the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even the rendering of the skin tone, there's like so much less dimension, it seems. Benoit's portrait of Madeleine has been read by historians as a symbol for the rights of women. of Black people and of women of color at this time. Benoit presents a Black woman in the same light, fashion, and context that high society white women would be rendered in. This piece was hotly contested upon its debut at the Paris Salon, not surprisingly so, with critics calling it the Black Stain.
Oh my God.
I know, isn't that fucked up? Her exposed breast has been contemplated as an allegory in various contexts. In 2019, new research revealed that this woman's name was Madeline, and that she was a formerly enslaved woman in the French colonies prior to the abolishment of slavery, and then she relocated to work as a servant for Benoit's family in the 1800s.
Wow.
So there is a power dynamic here between Marie Benoit and Madeline that I think is important to include.
Right.
That this woman worked for Marie Benoit, and she probably didn't, like, have much of a choice of whether or not she sat for this portrait. Marie Benoit was probably like, hey, we pay you. Do this.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know.
It's
We can
definitely
speculate.
loaded, though.
Definitely loaded, right.
I mean,
we don't know what happened. We don't know what the dynamic was. And Marie Benoit, at the end of the day, sold this painting for 11,000 francs. It ended up in Royal French collections. And she definitely benefited from the image of this woman who likely was not compensated for her likeness.
Right, yeah.
And I think that is definitely important to discuss, even if this did stand as a symbol for the rights of women and people of color at this time.
The individual Madeline
Right, the
didn't
individual
really
Madeline,
benefit
yeah.
It's definitely exploitative to an extent, for sure.
Multifaceted lenses. Some historians have speculated that her bare breast is emblematic of slave markets, where the naked bodies of the enslaved are often inspected like products. Other scholars have speculated that Madeline's breast is an allegory for peace, as was also popular in neoclassical art, as seen in French painter Elisabeth Louis Vigée de Brun's piece Bringing Back Abundance of 1780.
You rocked that name, by the way.
I hope so.
It sounded good to me.
The most compelling interpretation, in my humble opinion, however, is that Madeline's strategic positioning paired with how she seemingly offers her breast is made to reference wet nursing. Like the Mother Marys that we have discussed earlier, or unlike the Mother Marys, rather, that we have discussed earlier, cramming their nipples into the mouth of the prophet, Madeline has no child to offer her breast to. In fact, her eye contact and her location in the composition almost insinuates that she is offering her breast to the immediate audience, the Paris Salon of 1800, France's most wealthy and most powerful. This implies that the labor of enslaved individuals, and in particular the labor of Black women and Black wet nurses, have nourished French society.
Oh, I got chills everywhere on my body. Wow, and to reveal this at the most prominent
at this
Paris
pinnacle,
Salon.
Yeah. This particular thesis was presented by an old classmate of mine, Gabrielle Patron, who wrote a fantastic paper on this. Just had to shout her out because she introduced this piece to me. Another mode of interpretation is like there's a blue cloth on the backing of her chair paired with the red belt and the white cloth. That's the colors of the French flag. And then there's a painting by Eugene Delacroix, which presents freedom as a woman with an exposed breast raising the French flag. That could also mean that Madeline stands to represent freedom.
I literally have goosebumps all over my body. So cool. Yeah.
I'm so glad. Speaking of wet nurses, as we have extensively, let's go into the Impressionist movement from here, which sees an uptick of images of women breastfeeding in a way that does not feel sexual. It's a way that we've not seen before. These women are not the Holy Mother. They are not the King's Mistress. They are simply people.
They're just the girls.
Yeah, they're just the girls. At the Races by Edgar Degas, which was painted in 1869, presents a woman breastfeeding in public at what was a high society event.
Scandal.
So, but like it's very scandalous in theory and historical context, but look at the background of the composition. She is central breastfeeding, but there's so much other things happening, so many things happening around her.
I mean, when I look at this painting, I don't notice her at all. I mean, it takes a further read to actually become aware of it.
Like,
and even then, it's sort of like, oh, she's breastfeeding.
It's
okay.
a little bit obscure. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's presented in a different
It doesn't feel like a crazy event. It feels like a casual part of life.
This is Auguste Renoir's Maternity of 1885, once again associating breastfeeding with maternity. This is at the downfall of breastfeeding in Western society at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. My favorite of the Impressionist works of women breastfeeding is that of Berthe-Morisot. I'm definitely not saying her name correctly, who paints a wet nurse named Angélie feeding Julie Manet, which is the artist's own daughter. This entire situation is radical. This is a woman artist painting women's labor, painting somebody breastfeeding her own child.
See, that makes sense because this one kind of captures the chaos of motherhood a bit more in the background, the more intense
all the
strokes.
Movement in the brushstrokes. It's very erratic. And I feel like first glance, I mean, it doesn't jump and shout at you that there is a boob here, but it's visibly somebody breastfeeding.
Yeah, it does feel like that. It captures a weird nostalgia, too.
Absolutely,
I feel like,
yeah.
I mean, I've heard from mothers, now and again where it's like this haze of you have this child and you're breastfeeding it and then it's sort of a sleepless
wake
moment
every hour.
in time that you lose rather quickly. So I feel like it's definitely not just, a boob is out and a baby is suckling on it. It's the experience.
The experience of breastfeeding, of the trials and tribulations that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
And of outsourcing that labor, paying somebody to do it for you.
Yeah, that's another layer.
Can't even blame them, honestly. Wet nursing is a very, very old profession.
Mm-hmm.
This feels very progressive, though, right? With the Impressionists.
It
very
really
natural.
it does. And I feel like the women, too, I mean, in the Renoir painting, she feels like almost a working woman. Like she feels she's wearing this hat. She has places to be.
She's on the go.
Yeah, it feels
like
an acknowledgement of women are a little bit more than just the breast, but
exactly
they're more considered as people. Maybe not all the way, but
maybe not fully. We're getting somewhere, we hope. This feels like women's labor, breastfeeding in public places. But fret not, though. Going into the 20th century, they got real fucking weird with it.
Oh, great. Awesome. Yes! I love Egon Schiele so much.
I love Egon Schiele. This is reclining female nude with legs spread apart. I kind of love this. Oh, wow. I feel like Egon Schiele, Gustav Klimt, who we talked about last week. Yes.
Like the depiction of female bodies in this way is really controversial, but
it is.
But it's just aesthetically, and it strikes this nerve that is, I don't know. I want to know more about it.
Right. She feels self-assured in her sexuality, but she's still being looked at.
And she does resemble like a sex doll in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And almost masculine in her shoulders and
broad shoulders, muscular, playing with gender a bit.
Right.
We also have Pablo Picasso's Reclining Nude of 1932. How do we feel?
When it comes to Picasso,
I don't like it usually.
Yeah, I mean, I can, and I know so many. Picasso has his posse of bros that sort of like he's the only artist that they
care
know
about,
because his name is Picasso and everybody knows Picasso, and it's like, well, he contributed so much to art, and it's like, yeah. But I don't have to like it that much every time, and this one isn't really doing it for me.
Her figure is very much contorted. It doesn't look like a natural position. Her body is in hues of green and blue, but her breasts, very round, very large, almost staring at us, are a lighter shade of green and red.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of making them distinct in the composition.
It's like they're violent.
They're violent boobs. I don't know what she's doing. And also he has two pairs here.
I know.
Which have been speculated in his work to be symbolic of the erect penis.
Oh, so this does it for him.
This is stem and berries, so to speak.
I see. So he likes his women abstract. He likes his women.
He's like, the least I know. The least I see.
Don't even approach me if you're not.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Marcel Duchamp, Prière de Toucher. I'm going to say Please Touch. That's the English translation. Please
Yes.
Touch of 1947 is simply a framed breast that appears to be squished down into the picture frame with a black border. There is nothing else happening in this composition.
So, and I don't know the story or
I don't
the
know much of the story
context
either.
really, but my first
much
gut
on this.
reaction is like, who is this guy to...
Why is he doing that?
I know, like, and I...
Because on one hand, commentary on commodification of women's bodies, sure. On the other hand, you are profiting off of that discourse, and it's not necessarily serving women.
Yeah.
Or he's saying that this is the correct context.
I mean, for art like this, it's all up in the air, I think.
Really, yeah.
Because it's like, even us having a conversation about it is probably what he wanted with this piece. So we're falling into that. I mean, I think it communicates like a very heavy-handed statement.
I agree. You never know. You never know with him, with this guy, I swear. Women artists, however, of this time and into today, started pushing and are still pushing art of the breast in other directions. Here we have Alice Neal's Childbirth of 1939. Alice Neal liked to disrupt the visual function of the breast as something to look at, something ornamental, something meant to be aesthetically pleasing or erotic. While in the maternity ward birthing her own child, Alice Neal met Goldie Goldwasser, who is the subject of this painting, Childbirth, of 1939. She has these sort of swollen breasts that are almost bruised. She has these dark bags under her eyes. Her body is contorted in a way that cannot at all be comfortable. This is not a flattering portrait, but I do think that it is emblematic of what women endure, what people who give birth go through.
It feels like she's being suffocated by her own form. Like
Absolutely,
she has her hands and arms are placed around her neck, but not
neck and face.
Yeah, not that she's actually strangling herself, but just the position of them. They're very contorted.
Yeah.
And the nipples are definitely what we said before, like evocative of that pain
and suffering,
that and trauma that women, that childbirth actually is.
Childbirth, which is never discussed, especially not in art. I think Alice Neal really broke a wall with that, with her depictions of motherhood and of childbirth. Her nude portraiture of women, including self-portraiture, often featured saggy asymmetrical breasts that not only allowed for human flaws, but embraced them and even enhanced them or emphasized them. She has a self-portrait of 1980 of her as an elderly woman, her in her later years.
I love that.
I love this
swoop of her breasts.
Right.
She's such a master of line. She uses this weirdly like sickly lime green in a lot of her portraits. She
does.
Which is cool. Again, it's sort of not flattering, but it's it's evocative.
Yeah. And it's like maybe not, super picturesque or idyllic, but it speaks to lived experience in a way that even some photorealistic art cannot convey. As we enter the contemporary era, boobs and images from popular culture, as previously discussed, are very much still objectified and commodified. But in the contemporary art world, and especially through the works of women artists and queer artists, the allegorical breast still holds political power. Artists like Lisa Yuka Savage uses the female nude, especially with emphasized breasts in particular, to underscore the commodification of women's bodies. Yuka Savage's features are so exaggerated, like the shape of the bosom, the smooth illusionistic brushwork. Very demure.
It feels comical.
It's almost uncomfortable to look at, I feel like. Her face is completely obscured. Her identity is obscured. Her boobs are boobin'.
I mean, yeah. These are hefty.
Those are
I feel like they do look weirdly painful, though.
They do, right.
Like, I feel the weight of them through the image. I feel like if she moved, that they would just...
That would poke her eye out.
It'd be crazy to witness.
It would be crazy to witness. For those of you who are not watching with us, this piece is Lisa Yuka Savage, Fucking Rock of 1996. She has so many works that look very, very, very similar to this. I actually have an artist book of hers.
And this was from 1996, so a bit
we're
more...
getting up there.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, entering the 21st century, we have Have Karaman, who is an Iraqi immigrant, and here she uses breasts to question and confront the objectification of immigrants and refugees, especially women and women of color in these power dynamics. And this work in particular, Boob Gold of 2018.
I think that the more in modern times and in the 21st century, we see women adopting maybe the toxic ways that men have objectified the breast in the past
and like
sort of
reclaiming that.
Yeah, like repurposed it to be intentional.
Right.
So I think that we see that here
like
a little bit.
These very exaggerated, round, perfectly symmetrical breasts. She's exposing them willingly. Her face is almost devoid of emotion here.
Yeah, but she does look almost resentful.
She does.
I feel like it's this placid sort of devoid of emotion, but almost as if the woman is steeling herself for something or trying not to feel
removing herself from
dissociating a little bit. Yeah, that's very powerful. Wow.
Very much so.
And in the context of the 21st century too, like we see such horrible depictions of breasts all the time.
We do.
In like Instagram ads and all this. We can't escape it.
AI generated images.
Yeah. So it is, I love seeing a woman artist use the imagery to
absolutely
for a purpose and to remind us that female bodies are, or anyone with breasts, all bodies are just sacred things that have much more purpose than being objectified and monetized in day-to-day culture.
I just got goosebumps.
I know, goosies.
Oh my gosh. To conclude, if it's even possible to conclude.
I'm sad.
I know. There's so much more to talk about here. The breast in art and in popular visual culture is enigmatic. It is hard to define. And throughout history has been ripped from women, from AFAB bodies. It's been secularized, sexualized, and politicized. It has been a tool for colonialism, racism, and sexism, as well as a tool against said isms when it is visually reclaimed. From prehistoric fertility totems to Madonna and Child, to allegories of institutional control, humans love assigning aesthetic function to the fun bags.
The fun bags. To the honkers.
To the rack.
Wow. I think that no matter what year it is in the distant future, we'll always find a way to include the breast somehow for some reason.
It is true.
You can't. And they still try and censor us on Instagram.
Oh my God.
And they're going to censor us on YouTube.
They are going to censor us for this.
Oh my God. We're going to jail.
I found a really funny image when I was like clicking around doing research of the Venus of Willendorf with censored two censor bars over her nono square and her bosoms.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It is very nuts.
It's nuts and bonkers. Bonkers honkers.
Bonkers honkers. I think that's the episode name.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think that I'm going to definitely forward this to the cleavage queen.
Oh my gosh,
that I met
please.
From King Richard.
Did you inform her of this?
I did tell her. So hopefully she'll tune in. We'll report back. Maybe. We have to go to the contest.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be, for all of these women that we discussed this episode, we have to go for them and we have to represent. Honor. Yeah.
We do.
Man. Thank you so much for your beautiful research.
Thank you for listening to me.
That was so awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Great. And I feel like we could do so many more episodes
I think that this is maybe framework for further.
Yeah, even more in depth. So if people have specific episode requests or themes, and especially if you have resources like books or articles or anything that you want us to dive into, send it our way.
Please send it our way.
And yeah, we have all the stuff at this point when you're listening to this. We've got Instagram and a website and everything under Gilded Eye Podcast. Yeah. Hit us up. That's great.
LMK.
Talk about us. Talk about boobs with us, but don't send us photos of
Of your boobs.
Of your boobs.
Wow.
No unsolicited.
If you listened to this episode all the way to the end, your boobs look great today.
Yeah, they do, and I'm so proud of them and
I'm
you.
so proud of them and you.
And you, and I'm proud of you, Myra, as well.
I'm proud of you.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone, for listening.
Thank you for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Farewell.
Perky.
Perky.
Perky and perfect. All right. Bye.